Hello and welcome to a week's worth of food and drink adventures in and around the Fort William area of the Scottish Highlands. Join us as we battle the Scottish weather by bike, indulge in some of the best food we've ever eaten, and of course enjoy a dram or two along the way. I really hope you enjoy this episode.
Well, hello and welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the beautiful, beautiful Highland town of Fort William. Just set out on my first day of pedals and pintings, or whatever you want to call it, for this trip. And there's another one, just about to leave. Came across the Cannonball Run Supercar Highland Rally. So, well, that's exciting. So today we're heading to one of the most famous pubs in this area. Of course, Fort William, most well known for being the place right next to the UK's highest mountain, Ben Nevis, and we are going to the Ben Nevis Inn. Despite my love for this place, this part of the world, and the amount of times I've been here, I've never been to that pub. It sits outside of the town, it's right next to the mountain, at the foot of the mountain, and to be entirely honest with you, the one time I climbed that mountain, well, it just about killed me off. So a pint afterwards wasn't an option, I just needed my bed. And that was the only time I've ever been really close to it. And so yeah, it's a funny one, but we're off there today. Apparently the food's fantastic, and I am well assured the local beers are as well. So let's get on with it. Cannonballs come through here. All right, Charger, Urus, McLaren. Well, we're nearly there. Not a long ride to this one, just over 4 miles. And of course, threw my bike away for the first time, and the gears have started jumping. So I have to sort that one when they get there. But there you go, you can see the mountain up ahead. That is it, sat in the clouds, misty mountains. And yeah, let's go and get a bite to eat and a pint. I mean, just look at that. What a view to go for a pint for. These hills are no joke though. And here it is, look, the Ben Nevis Inn. Pint acquired. This is the Cairngorm Brewery Lager. Never had it before, had quite a bit from Cairngorm. They're generally pretty good, a lot better on cask and tap in the Highlands than when they were exported out, but generally, yeah, pretty decent. I'm sat on the wonkiest table in the world. That end of the table, the top, is probably 1.5 feet higher than the seat that side of me, and if I fall off at any point, it's not because I've had too many beers, it's because it's genuinely a little bit treacherous. But the view out here looks absolutely phenomenal, as you can tell. So let's give it a go. Cheers. Oh, super crisp, loads of bitterness, loads of foam in the tash, nice big malty finish. It feels a little like a lager where every single element has been just amped up, like it's taken it to the nines. It's a little bit of a comic interpretation almost. It's not quite got the subtleties of a proper Euro lager, but it has got heaps and heaps of beautiful local mountain spring water in there, and it, yeah, is doing the business. Now, wanted some food. They can only do food inside, which gives us a bit of a problem with the bikes. I know the crime rate here is insanely low, but I still don't like leaving them unattended. So we're going to see if we can get them somewhere, and if not, we might have to just pootle on back into town to pick up something else. Cheers. So unfortunately we've just had to leave the Ben Nevis Inn. They would not serve food outside. I couldn't find anywhere suitable to store the bikes. I know the crime rate around here is low, but I can't get out of that big city mentality wherever I go. Yeah, beer was good. Interesting, they also don't like dogs in the restaurant apparently, well, the bar, so also a bit of an odd one. So now we're heading to the Highland Soap Company, of all places, to see if we can get some food at their visitor centre, because apparently it's pretty damn good.
The majority of this video now is going to be me on the voiceover walking you through what happened. The original idea was to go somewhere different every day by bike to try and give you the best idea of the scenery and the whole scale of the place, and to give the entire trip a bit of balance. However, as you'll see, the Scottish weather had other plans. Let's get back to the Highland Soap Company cafe though. This is the same place we'd ridden through on the way to the Ben Nevis Inn, where we'd seen the Cannonball Rally cars parked up. They had a reasonable menu of sandwiches, burger, a couple of other bits, but unfortunately by the time we'd arrived, a lot of things had already sold out for the day. Mrs. Crummybeard went into order while I waited. And I waited, and I waited. And yes, I waited some more. It's safe to say this is not fast food. Thankfully though, once ordered, it didn't take long for things to arrive. I'd opted for the local lager, Glenspeen Brewing Co.'s Snow Goose, a beer which I am very, very familiar with. However, I was a little disappointed to see it was a mere 330ml can for a pretty hefty price tag. My disappointment though was amplified when I opened the can and it exploded all over the table and myself, leaving a good amount of it on the floor. This beer was off. But I am happy to report, once I flagged this to a member of staff, it was swiftly replaced and our food started to arrive. We both opted for a toasted ham and cheese sandwich with a side salad, coleslaw and fries. And to be honest, I just couldn't resist adding a side to share of one of the most surprising local delicacies, mac and cheese. I'm not sure when Scotland got their affinity for mac and cheese, but I'm in full support of it. To finish, we shared 2 cake slices. The first was a fantastic and impossibly moist lemon drizzle, and the other, my personal favourite, a honey nut cluster flapjack. It was sensational and led to quite a bit of wheezing on the cycle home.
So there we go, that was the larder at the Highland Soap Company. In the end, it was a nice experience, but it's just one of those places that the service, when they want to, is fantastic, as was the situation getting resolved with that beer, but the overall ordering and queuing thing was just, yeah, a bit difficult. So look, it is what it is. The food was good, pricey, but good, and we had a nice time. So really, that's it for today's adventure. Just going to make the long slog back to where we're staying now, but you'll join us tomorrow probably for the next instalment.
The next day, the weather came in and refused to leave. A soggy dog walk, spying some interesting flora and fauna, and simply hoping for a break in the weather occupied most of the day. But it wasn't to be. So we headed into town to try one of Fort William's newest restaurants, Sónas. I'd be hard pressed to describe the type of cuisine in a single word. They really do have something for everyone. From relatively inexpensive burgers to eye-wateringly priced lobster thermidors, they really did cover many bases. I opted for a pint of their lager, which is one I've never heard of before, Sleeping Elephant Lager. There was no brewery name listed in the menu or on the pump clip, and online searches only yield results for other styles of beer with the same name. It's possibly a restaurant exclusive from a local brewery, but I guess we'll never know. The decor in Sónas is eclectic, hyper-modern with a few weird and wonderful art pieces thrown in. If nothing else, what you will get here is a full experience. For starters, Mrs. Crummybeard opted for the chicken skewers, which looked absolutely incredible, and I went for the seafood bowl, effectively a fancy prawn cocktail with a bit of crab and avocado thrown in for good measure. I have to say, both were an incredible start, and reasonably simple dishes done very, very well. For mains, Mrs. Crummybeard went with the pesto linguine, which contained enough parmesan to make an Italian blush. I chose the braised venison tagliatelle, perhaps not the most visually stimulating choice for this video, but I'm a big fan of local Scottish venison and the flavours were simply outstanding. For dessert, we both went for the sticky toffee pudding and ice cream, which may well have been the best sticky toffee pudding I have ever had. This is one of those places I cannot recommend highly enough, a truly fantastic culinary experience. With it still being early evening, there's only one thing to do, and that is to head to one of my favourite pubs in the world, the Black Isle Bar, Fort William, for a quick pint before heading back once again. Rest assured, this is not the last time you'll be seeing this place in this video. Next up, it's time for something a little different, a distillery tour and whisky tasting at the Ben Nevis Distillery. The tours here are super popular, and while we managed to book on the morning that we went, by the time we arrived, all the tours for that day had sold out. Even if you're unable to get onto a tour though, they have a few nice bits of whisky history in the reception, plus a bar and cafe in which anyone can walk in and get a bite to eat or a dram or two. The tour itself takes you through the entire whisky distilling process, starting at the malt house where they were receiving a delivery at the time, showing off the malted grains and blocks of peat used for those smokier drams. Next, it's to the mash house where the grains are cooked with the local water, which is a natural source straight off Ben Nevis itself, to create what is in effect just a very odd beer without any of the hops. Then we're off to the washroom. No, it's not a toilet, but a room where the washback containers sit and fermentation takes place. The heat that comes off these is impressive to say the least, and the aroma from all of that funky yeast action really is something very unique. They even have two wooden washbacks that they do use still today, but they do so purely as a visual aid for their tours to show you how something would have been done when the distillery was founded. They don't make a significant difference to the whisky in the end result though. Now we're off to the still house. This is where the fully fermented beer-like liquid becomes a spirit using these massive copper stills. They heat the liquid and catch the condensation to get that super potent liquid that will eventually become aged whiskey. And then the last part in the production process is the aging and maturation. Understandably, we couldn't go in the actual warehouses as the risks are simply too high with so much very flammable liquid in one place, but this outbuilding demonstrated the different sizes of barrels, and the tour guide explained the normal types of barrels they like to use for different products at Ben Nevis. Ex-bourbon casks are a common favourite at Ben Nevis, and I even managed to spy a used Four Roses barrel yet to be reconstructed for use here. Finally, we're off for the most tactile part of the experience, the whisky tasting. When booking a tour, you're given the option of a standard or basic tour. The standard tour gets you 4 drams of Ben Nevis to try at the end, whereas the basic is only 2 drams. The 4 that we tried were Nevis Dew, which is their blended whisky, which I've previously reviewed and I'm a massive fan of. The Ben Nevis Corlees, their latest release, and takes its name from a lochen on Ben Nevis, which is the start of the water source for the distillery itself. Then it was the Ben Nevis 10-year, not hugely dissimilar to the Corlees, but certainly shows its age and sophistication a little better. It really is an excellent all-rounder. And finally, the Ben Nevis Traditional. This is their only peated whisky, and it showcases an array of smoky, fruity and chocolatey notes. It's a great introduction into peated malts if you're trying to get into them. I'll be honest, to pick a favourite, I'm torn between the Corlees and the 10-year, so I bought a bottle of the Corlees since, well, I've already got a bottle of the 10-year at home unopened, so another one there for the collection. To sober up afterwards, we headed to a pub just outside of Fort William called the Factors Inn. This place is owned by the Inverlochie Castle Hotel, which, if you don't know, well, it's a very, very posh hotel, and as a result makes it a bit on the pricey side to say the least, but their menu is also very different and it has quite an interesting concept. The simplest way to put this is that it's an all-you-can-eat on a very upmarket scale with very limited choice. You start off with bread and butter and a delightful salad. You then choose between steak, fish, or a vegetarian option, and then you get your fries along with that, and effectively free refills on the lot. The menu suggests the refills on your main, the meat or the fish, is limited to 2 rounds, but we were offered more at the time, and in any event, you won't be leaving that place hungry. The dessert of the day was a gorgeous cheesecake, and now I'm going to go for a lie down due to both the richness of the food and the size of the bill at the end. The next day required a bit more simplicity, and with the rain still bearing down for the most part, we headed back into town to one of my favourite places on earth. You guessed it, the Black Owl Bar, Fort William. If you're not keen on craft beer or pizza, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much as I do, but they are the two things that I can drone on about for hours, as is my love for them, and well, it's just the two things that they happen to do so incredibly well. Kicking things off with a pint of Black Owl Blonde, this is the beer that made me fall in love with this brewery many moons ago, and it's almost always my first pick on arrival. To some it's just another lager, but for me it epitomises exactly what a good lager should be. The decor here is simple in parts and intricate in others. It never feels overdone or over polished, but there's always something to look at and appreciate. The authentic wood-fired pizza oven really lets you know they're doing this properly. Now it's time for their Nitro Porter whilst deciding which pizza to go for. Guinness isn't as prevalent in the Highlands as it is in the rest of the UK, but that doesn't matter because this is simply better in every single way. The pizza choices are refined. They offer a small amount of customization, but in general they're pretty set with just 7 options. All of which, by the way, are fantastic. Pizza's now ordered, and a pint of Black Owl's Spider Monkey IPA to wash it all down with is just the ticket. Mrs. Crummybeard opted for a simple margarita pizza, and I, as always, just couldn't resist that venison salami. I must have eaten 30 pizzas from the Black Owl Bar in Fort William since it opened, and never have I ever wished I was somewhere else. A swift half of Black Owl's Nestmel, a Belgian blonde inspired ale to finish off the meal, and once again it's time to sleep it all off and do it all again tomorrow. The 5th day of this foodie adventure sees us jump in the van with the dogs and head out for an hour's drive west to the Highland port town of Mallaig. There are 2 reasons for this particular trip. Firstly, just outside the town sits the beautiful beach of Silver Sands, and, most importantly, I believe this tiny Highland town to have some of the best sandwiches in the world. The parking situation in Mallaig can be a little difficult during the summer months, so Mrs. Crummybeard jumped out of the van to pick up our goodies for the day. The place in question is the Bakehouse in Mallaig, and just look at some of the lovely delights on offer. We pulled into a lay-by on our way to Silver Sands to enjoy these ridiculously tasty breakfast pastries, and then it's off for a dog walk to build up the appetite for the rest of our bakery haul. The weather again wouldn't truly relent. It was sunny as we started, and within moments I was soaked by freezing rain. Thankfully though, it didn't last long, and we enjoyed our time at the beach, even spotting a glimpse of the so-called Harry Potter train, actually named the Jacobite Steam Train, which ferries passengers from Fort William to Mallaig and back each day. A walk back to the van, and then we're off once again back to Mallaig to sit overlooking the harbour to enjoy our lunch and hopefully catch a sight of the famous harbour seal that lives there trying to steal fish as they drop off the fishing boats. Mrs. Crummybeard went for a focaccia topped with pesto, rocket, tomato, mozzarella and lashings of high quality olive oil. For myself, a sourdough roll with prosciutto, rocket, tomato, mozzarella and balsamic vinegar. I really can't do the quality of these sandwiches justice. It is simply a must visit if you're in the area, or at all, to be honest. To finish, a miniature Spanish-style egg custard tart and a giant cookie to share. That cookie was so good, I am genuinely tempted to attempt a 1,000-mile trip just for another bite. It really was immense. We watched over the harbour for the best part of an hour, but alas, the famous seal never showed himself. We have been here now on at least 5 occasions, and only once were we lucky enough to catch a glimpse. But for a busy Highland port town, it sure is peaceful.
Well, it might be our last day, but after a week of trying, we're back out on the bikes, which is a nice way to end our week here in Fort William. But I have to say, after a week of eating out and not being able to do this, it's feeling like a bit more effort than normal. So we are into the forest around Ben Nevis, sitting on the very foothills right low down, and we're headed to the Nevis Range, which is one of the biggest mountain bike venues in the UK. Now, we're not going for the cycling, incidentally. Of course, this is a food and drink blog, so, well, we're going for breakfast. The other thing worth noting is the temperature has dropped a bit over the week. When we first went out on the bikes last weekend, the highs of 26, 27 degrees. It's 7 now, and I'm regretting not wearing gloves. My hands are perishing, so let's go get a coffee. Well, it feels weird not being here on a mountain bike, but here is our cafe for the morning.
The cafe at the base station of the Nevis Range is called the Pinemarten Cafe, due to the number of Pinemartens in this area. Their breakfast setup is a very run-of-the-mill quick service thing, presumably to cater for the small hotel that recently opened on site. We opted for breakfast rolls, Mrs Crummybeard had a sausage and bacon, and myself, sausage and black pudding. Scottish black pudding is rarely ever a letdown, and this was no different. In general, the quality here was just average, as was the price. There's nothing really to get excited about, but nothing really to complain about either, though a bit of butter on those rolls definitely would have helped. Their lunch options though do look much more interesting, so next time I think we'll visit a little later in the day. It rained on and off while we ate, which as usual wasn't ideal, but soggy cobs aside, when the sun does come out, this is just a great place to sit and watch the world go by. On the way back, we took a detour to explore a few different trails as a bit of a recce for future adventures. Then it was time to plan our final meal on this foodie adventure, and it's probably not the venue you would expect for a finale, but rest assured you will be amazed. We're off to the local cinema. And no, not to watch a film. The Highland Cinema in Fort William boasts one of the very best eateries in the entire town. From salads to sharing platters and more wood-fired pizza on the menu, but the real must-try here are their speciality burgers. Like many places in the town, they have the local Glen Speen beers on tap, plus more in bottles. My pint arrived with some of the best domage I've ever seen on an IPA, and I'm still not quite sure how they managed to do it. Their whiskey selection is also one of the very best in the town, so what more could you ask for? Mrs Crummybeard went for the Fiddler on the Roof burger, a prime beef patty with pastrami, gherkins and cheese. Meanwhile, I couldn't resist the newly added Deer Hunter burger, a prime local venison burger with brie and caramelised onions, served with a red currant jelly. It was absolutely mind-blowing. The decor in the cinema cafe is simply timeless. Classic Scottish motifs throughout, but well considered and very cosy for such a large room. They play clips from old local documentaries on the wall, so you get in for a history lesson along with your fantastic meal. After dinner, it was time for a farewell drink or two, but first I want to add a couple of honourable mentions that we didn't get a chance to film in earlier in the week. First off is the Nevis Bakery. If you want to take home some authentic Scottish shortbread, I dare say theirs may well be the very best in existence, at least the very best at a semi-reasonable price. And then there is the Highland Liquor Company, a bottle shop specialising in local whisky and beer, along with a fine selection of wines and other spirits to match all tastes. This is a boutique-y place, but the prices are far from extravagant, and the knowledge and service provided is always top tier. Now, I promise you, we tried to go to some different pubs for this, but on the day everywhere was absolutely rammed, and truthfully, no one has beer as good as, you guessed it, going back to the Black Isle bar once again. There is nothing really else I can say about this place that you don't already know, other than I just absolutely love it. And that really is it for this Highland adventure. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it if you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.